Why Japan, India, and Germany are racing to partner with Australia. Three of the world's richest democracies are secretly funneling billions into a country most people see as just beaches and kangaroos. Not Canada, not New Zealand, Australia. And if you think this is about tourism or trade deals, you're missing the biggest geopolitical shift of the decade. Because what Japan, India, and Germany just figured out could rewrite the entire balance of power in the Pacific. And most people have no idea it's happening. But wait, before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff. Comment, I subscribe below, and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. Let's start with the least obvious reason, but the one that's already changing lives. Meet Priya, 29 years old, electrical engineer from Mumbai. In 2022, she flew to Kalgoorlie, Western Australia, for what was supposed to be a 3-day mining conference. What she found: 14 new lithium mines under construction, dust clouds visible from space, convoys of trucks moving 24/7, and every single one funded by Indian conglomerates. Her company, Adani, just committed $4.8 billion to Australian lithium extraction. She told her family she'd be back in Mumbai by Christmas. That was 2 years ago. She's still there. Here's why. Australia sits on $1.3 trillion worth of the materials that make your phone, your laptop, your electric car work. Lithium, cobalt, rare earth elements. The stuff that powers the modern world. And right now, China controls 80% of global rare earth processing. But Australia has the second largest rare earth deposits on the planet, and Japan, India, and Germany just realized something terrifying. If China ever cuts them off, their entire economies collapse overnight. The U.S. Geological Survey confirmed in 2024 that Australia holds 6.2 million tons of lithium reserves, the largest in the world. A study published in Nature Materials in 2023 warns that global lithium demand will exceed supply by 2027 unless Australia scales up fast. So Japan's investing in processing plants. India's buying mines. Germany's funding research labs. If you ever wonder why your next smartphone could cost $3,000, this is why. The entire tech industry is one diplomatic crisis away from a supply chain apocalypse. But here's what no one's telling you. These mining towns are exploding so fast that housing costs have tripled. Locals, people whose families have lived there for generations, are being priced out. Rent in Kalgoorlie hit $600 per week for a one-bedroom. In a town that used to be affordable for miners, some indigenous leaders, like those from the Yindjibarndi people, have negotiated landmark agreements with companies like Fortescue Metals, proving ethical partnerships can work. But they're the exception, not the rule. And Priya? She says she feels guilty every time she video calls her parents. I came here for minerals, she told me. Now I'm part of the reason Australians can't afford to live in their own country. But rare earth metals? That's just the surface. What these countries really want is something far more dangerous. Darwin, Northern Australia, naval base. 2019, it was quiet. A few U.S. Marines rotating through. Some joint exercises. Standard alliance stuff. Now, Japanese destroyers dock monthly. Indian aircraft carriers run joint drills quarterly. And in August 2024, German frigates arrived for the first time in 20 years. Commander Sarah Chun, Australian Navy officer stationed there, told reporters it feels like NATO, but in flip-flops. Here's what happened. In 2021, Australia signed the AUKUS agreement, a deal with the US and UK to build 8 nuclear-powered submarines by 2040. Not nuclear-armed, nuclear-powered, meaning they can stay underwater for months, travel farther, stay silent longer. And here's the kicker. Australia is now the only country outside the US and UK trusted with this technology. Why does that matter? Because of geography. A 2024 RAND Corporation study titled Indo-Pacific Naval Modernization found that Australian submarines can reach the South China Sea, the most contested waterway on Earth, in 3 hours. Japan's? 6 hours. India's? 8 hours from their nearest base. If you've ever felt safe because of distance, Australia just proved that's over. Japan sees Australia as the southern anchor of their defense perimeter. India sees it as the only stable military partner between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. Germany, who stayed out of Pacific security for decades, just sent a frigate because they realize their entire export economy depends on those shipping lanes staying open. But here's the controversy. This is the most expensive defense decision in Australian history. $368 billion over 30 years. And it was made with zero public referendum. Senator David Shoebridge called it the biggest financial commitment ever made without asking the people footing the bill. Critics argue there's another way: regional diplomacy, ASEAN-style cooperation, de-escalation. But then Beijing signed a security pact with the Solomon Islands, 1,500 kilometers from Australia's coast. And suddenly, diplomacy felt like a luxury no one could afford. Commander Chin says she used to sleep easy. Now, every time I see a new ship pull into port, I think, we're not preparing for peace. We're preparing for the worst. But there's a hidden reason these countries are rushing in, and it has nothing to do with war. By 2030, 5 years from now, 2.4 billion people will face severe water shortages, rivers drying up, aquifers depleted, crops failing. But Australia? Australia sits on top of the Great Artesian Basin, one of the largest underground freshwater reserves on Earth. 64,900 cubic kilometers of water, enough to supply all of Asia for half a century. Meet Klaus, 52, German agricultural investor. In 2023, he bought 14,000 hectares of farmland in Griffith, New South Wales. Not for profit, for survival. Germany can't feed itself if trade routes collapse. He told me over a crackling video call. One bad harvest, one war, one blockade. We're dependent on imports for 40% of our food. Australia can feed itself and export. That's not an investment. That's insurance. He told his wife it was a 5-year project. Now, he's applying for permanent residency. The University of Sydney published a study in 2024 showing that Australian agricultural exports to Asia increased 47% since 2020, with India and Japan as the top buyers. But here's the twist that'll make your head spin. Australia exports 70% of its food, while droughts ravage its own rural communities. Farmers in Queensland are buying water at $1,000 per megaliter, 10 times what it cost a decade ago. Meanwhile, foreign investors are extracting water under agreements signed without Indigenous consent. Michael Anderson, Indigenous water rights activist, says it bluntly. They're taking water that belongs to First Nations communities, bottling it, shipping it, and we're left with dust. If you ever wonder why billionaires are buying farms instead of stocks, this is the end game. Water is the new oil, and Australia has more of it than almost anyone. Some policy experts argue Australia could enforce strict water export caps and prioritize domestic food security. But current free trade agreements make that nearly impossible without renegotiating deals with 15-plus countries. So Klaus keeps buying land. Priya's company keeps mining. And everyday Australians watch their backyards turn into the world supermarket, whether they like it or not. But food and water won't matter if the population collapse happens first. Japan's population is shrinking by 800,000 people every single year. Germany's birth rate just hit a 50-year low. India's educated youth are fleeing to the US, Canada, UK, anywhere that isn't suffocating under unemployment and corruption. And all three countries just realized we're running out of young people. Meet Yuki, 26, graphic designer from Tokyo. She arrived in Melbourne in January 2024 on a working holiday visa. 6 months, max. See the sights, improve her English, go home. Instead, she found a tech job paying double her Tokyo salary. Rent was half the price compared to central Tokyo. And this is what broke her. A culture that didn't demand 80-hour work weeks. I cried the first time I left work at 5 p.m. and no one judged me, she said. She's now applying for skill migration. Her parents are furious. Her friends back home are jealous. The Australian Bureau of Statistics reported that 650,000 new skilled migrants arrived in 2023, the highest number since 1950. A Pew Research study from 2024 titled Global Migration Shifts found that Australia ranks number 2 globally for desired migration destination among Indians, Japanese, and Germans aged 25 to 40. If you ever felt trapped by your country's expectations, you're not alone, and governments know it. Japan sees Australia as a place to send its young people before they stop having children entirely. India sees it as a release valve for its overeducated, underemployed millions. Germany sees it as a cultural sister, English-speaking, Western, stable. But here's the problem nobody's talking about. Australia's infrastructure is already cracking. Melbourne's median home price hit $1.2 million AUD in 2024. Sydney's even worse. Hospitals have 6-month wait times for non-emergency surgery. Schools are overcrowded. Economist Lee Van Onselen warns, we're importing people faster than we can build homes, hospitals, or schools. This is a migration policy. It's a Ponzi scheme. Some experts suggest regional migration incentives, like Canada's rural visa programs, to spread population growth. Australia has the space. The infrastructure in regional towns could be upgraded, but it hasn't happened at scale because the political will isn't there. So Yuki stays in Melbourne, paying $2,400 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment, wondering if she escaped one trap just to land in another. But none of it, compares to the real reason, the one that could rewrite the entire 21st century. If China invades Taiwan, $3 trillion in global trade disappears overnight, not slowly. Not gradually, overnight, because Taiwan produces 92% of the world's advanced semiconductors, the chips inside your phone, your car, your medical equipment, your military drones, everything. And if Taiwan falls, the entire modern world grinds to a halt. Meet Dr. Anjali Mehta, 41, Indian semiconductor researcher. In March 2024, she moved to Brisbane. Her lab just received $180 million, funded by a consortium of Japanese, Indian, and Australian investors. Their mission? Replicate Taiwan's chip fabrication capabilities on Australian soil. Taiwan is the single point of failure for the entire modern world, she says. We have maybe 5 years to build an alternative. Maybe. The Council on Foreign Relations released a 2024 report modeling a Taiwan invasion scenario. The result? Global GDP contracts by 8-12%, comparable to the COVID-19 pandemic. Supply chains collapse. Inflation skyrockets. Governments scramble. And here's the terrifying part. There is no plan B, except one. Australia. The Brookings Institution identified Australia in 2024 as the only OECD nation with the mineral resources, energy capacity, industrial base, and geopolitical distance to serve as a manufacturing backup if Taiwan goes dark. Japan knows this. India knows this. Germany knows this. So they're not just investing in Australia. They're building a parallel civilization. Imagine your phone, your car, your pacemaker, all suddenly obsolete because one island 180 kilometers wide became a war zone. If you ever wonder what it feels like to live through a historical turning point, you're in it. But here's the controversy. Chinese state media called Australia's AUKUS role a dangerous provocation. Chinese foreign direct investment in Australia dropped 61% between 2020 to 2023, according to KPMG. Australia used to play both sides, trade with China, ally with the U.S. That's over. Some analysts, like Hugh White from the Australian National University, argue for strategic ambiguity. Hedge your bets, stay neutral, keep trading. But after the Solomon Islands Security Pact, after the Taiwan Strait tensions, after the South China Sea militarization, that window is closing. Dr. Mehta says she thinks about her daughter every day. She's 8, growing up in Brisbane, learning to surf. I moved here to build chips, she says. But really, I moved here because I think this is the safest place to raise a child if the world falls apart. And that's the real reason Japan, India, and Germany are racing to partner with Australia. Not for resources, not for military bases, not even for semiconductors. For insurance. Insurance that if the worst happens, if supply chains break, if wars erupt, if democracies fall, there's one stable, resource-rich, Western-aligned country far enough from the chaos to rebuild. So here's the final question. Australia just went from that chill country with beaches to the most strategically important democracy in the Pacific. In less than 5 years, Japan, India, and Germany are betting trillions that this shift is permanent. But here's what nobody's asking. What happens to everyday Australians when their country becomes the world's backup plan? When their housing prices explode because foreign investors are buying land? When their water gets exported while their own towns run dry? When their quiet coastal cities turn into geopolitical flashpoints? And if you were a young person in Tokyo, Mumbai, or Berlin right now, facing dead-end jobs, shrinking economies, or unbearable pressure, would you move to Australia before everyone else does, or avoid the pressure cooker becoming? Because that's the real story. Not the diplomats, not the defense contracts. The people. Priya, who left Mumbai for a mining job and can't go home. Yuki, who escaped Tokyo's grind but now pays $2,400 a month for a bedroom. Klaus, who bought a farm to survive the end of globalization. They're all betting on Australia. The question is, should you? Drop your answer below. And if you know someone planning to migrate, move for work, or invest overseas, send them this video, because the map just changed. And most people don't even know it yet.